welcome to my lesson 5 for the Java programming tutorial. Today I'm going to discuss about methods and rather called functions. So what is a method? A method is a block of code which only runs when it is called. So if you have noticed, when we write something on the main method, the code reads and runs it, right? So when we declare a method, even if you write it on the code, if it is not called, even though you have written the code, if you don't call it, it won't run on your program. So we use this to pass the data known as parameters into a method. So when do we use methods, or rather called functions? So methods are used to perform certain actions, and they are also known as functions. Why do we use methods? To reuse the code. So uh, why do we need to create a method if we could just manually type it, right? Of course, methods can be really complicated. They can be really long, and we can't really guarantee that our program is that simple if we go to a much deep dive program. Methods are existing just to know that for example, we want to do a computation for addition. uh, Rather just for us to manually type every time the variable is called, we can just create a method called addition, and we just call the addition method, and then the method will do the calculation for us. All we need to do is just call the method, and the method will do everything for us. We don't need to manually type it again. Like as I've shown you in the previous video, that when we're doing additions, I need to like uh, define three variables, and I should get their sum. I should do the a plus b. So we don't need to do those things. It's a kind of hassle if we are going to do it all manually. So this is the reason why methods are existing, and they are really useful. And I really recommend that you guys need to deep dive on methods, since every programmer or every developer uses a method. You cannot say it as a good code if you don't use methods or functions. They are very important, and I'm going to show you an example through the code. Okay, so let us say that we have an example. Let's try addition. So normally we did a is equal to 1, b is equal to 2. So if we want to get their sum, we mostly did like a plus b, and then we call the sum, and when you run it, the we can see the sum is 3, right? So why how can we do this into an easier, for example, there's an instance that we have like more than 10 or more variables. Should you do this all the time? Like for example, like we also have an integer called 3, and we also have integer d as an file. So I should create another sum which will add c plus d. So you can see that it's really messy, and it's really not it's cool. We cannot do this like for example, we had to like manipulate like 100 types of variables. We cannot do this like for 100 times. It's really not recommended. So that's the reason why methods are existing. So let me show you an example. So public int. So why do we place int here? So the meaning of int here is in the syntax. It's the return value. So if you know what you want to return, you may place it here. So we know that addition, we're going to return a sum, which is an integer value. So that's why we're placing integer here. And then call their name, which is let's say it addition. Okay, so this is a example of how to implement a method. And since we need to pass in the parameters, since we need to get two values, right, a and b, we'll make it integer a, integer b. Now we can see that we can accept two parameters, and all we need to do is just implement in this method. So let's say integer sum is equal to a plus b, and then we return sum. So what will this do? Sum will do the computation for us. It will take this a variable and b variable here, and then it will add them, and we will just return the sum. So we don't need this one. We don't need this one anymore. All we need to do is just call the sum, or rather, just call the addition, and say a and b. We just pass those two parameters we have declared, and of course we should make it static. And if you run this, it will do the calculation for us. So it's really convenient. Like for example, all we need to do is just get their values like 3 and int d, and all we need to do is we just copy paste this and just change the parameters, and then it's done. So it's really convenient. So let us try in an example in a for loop so that you could see that how convenient it could be. Let's say 10 I plus plus. Let's say we want to add the value of I every time. So let's say like let's print this system out and let's get I. Let's say we want to increment our I and add it to the B. So for instance, when we want to do this manually, we should type really like 10 times for just to add two variables. Or let's say much better, we create an J, which is also 1, and we just so every time a loop is, we just increment this J and we just implement J here, and we could see the results. Okay, so we could see that 1 plus, since this is 1, 1 plus 1 is 2, and then J is incremented. 1 plus 2 is 3, 1 plus 3 is 4, 5, and so on until 11. So we could see that J is incremented every time this loop is running, and we are getting their values one by one. So this is a basic example of a method, and let us jump into another method called recursive method. So recursion is a technique of making a function call itself. So as we know, we could also return the function itself. Like we for example, we have an integer value of 1. We can just call the 1 again and again. Like that's the logic behind it, and it provides a way to break complicated problems down into simple problems which are easier to solve. So let us say like if you guys are familiar with Fibonacci, let me explain to you. So a Fibonacci is, for example, we input 5. So the logic behind will start from 0, 1, 2, and then what is 0 plus 1? Sorry, 0 plus 1 is 1. 1 plus 1 is 2, and 1 plus 2 is 3. So this is the Fibonacci series. So when we want to solve this using the normal for loop method or the normal method, it's really gonna get complex. You can just call, if you can see the logic, I'll just implement it into the code. So let's say public int Fibonacci. Sorry, I think it's the wrong spelling. Yeah, rename. Yeah, Fibonacci, and it's gonna accept one number, which is the integer value. And we need to make a if-else statement for when n is equal to 0, we return 0, and if n is equal to 1 or n is equal to 2, we return 1. Then this is where the recursion happens. We just return Fibonacci, Fibonacci, yeah, n minus 2 plus Fibonacci n minus 1. So if I call this, let's say int n is equal to 10, and let's make a for loop just to demonstrate how it will work. And I plus plus, and all we need to do is just call the Fibonacci. Let me make it static. So Fibonacci and n. So let us see the results. Oh, please wait a minute. The answer is wrong. Please wait a minute. I'm sorry. Why did I run? I should have run the I. Sorry. Okay, so we could see here that Fibonacci series was running 10 times. So as you can see, 0 plus 1 is 1, 1 plus 1 is 2, 1 plus 2 is 3, 2 plus 3 is 5, 3 plus 5 is 8, 5 plus 8 is 13. So we could see that we only called this once, but it is running itself. So we could see that first we call 5, let's assume that this n is 10. Let's assume that it is yeah, let's assume that it is 10. So 10, we insert 10 is not equal to 0, so it won't go in here, also the same as here, so it will jump straight into the Fibonacci. And what is n minus 2? So we know that it's 10, so n minus 2 is 8 plus 8 plus 10 minus 1 is 9. Now we have 17, right? So another, again, 17 will go into here. I'm sorry, it doesn't work like this. 10 will go in here, and it will be 10 minus 2, right? So it is 8. So n will become 8. And now, this n will become 8. It will run this code with the value of 8. So this will become 8. And now, 8 will become minus 2 again, 6, and so on and so forth. And uh, which result into these numbers? It's really complicated to explain it through codes, but if you get the logic, it works like this until the Fibonacci will return 0 and 1, which will so it starts from here and it goes down and goes down and goes down until we return 1 and 0. And until the n becomes 0, this loop will stop and the program will stop and return these results. Okay, so I hope you guys understood the methods and how important are they. And I hope to see you in the next lesson. Thank you.